There are things besides the air, sea and sky, past the depths of space, beyond the context of a conversation, thought or feeling. There are things between the ridges of reality, as unknown to it as it is to them. These things squirm with aimless abandon. They want nothing, they think of nothing, they barely are, and yet they are. There were cells. These cells were not animal cells or plant cells. They were cells only in the sense that they organically composed an object. They were organic only in the sense that they underwent change. These cells would appear and create other cells. The old cells would disappear. They did not think about this process, and their composite did not think for them. They were a self-sustaining painting between folds of space, seen by nothing and no one. A man named Victor had a dream. His dreams were like most people's: distorted day residue, shifted memories, or abstract spaces between scenes his mind attempted to improvise. One night, as he flashed between dreamscapes, he generated a very particular scene. By the chance whims of neurons and fickle hands of luck, Victor dreamed of the painting between the folds of space. This image lasted for less than a second, less than a millisecond, less than any length of time a human can conceptually recognize. But it was enough. Energy comes in many forms, and that brief recognition gave the painting structure. The cells were cells. The painting was their body. It was a thing because someone had seen it. The painting between space grappled with this brief link to existence. It clung without reason or ambition, but a drive lower than instinct. Things naturally want to be. Given the choice, most will try. The painting tried harder than most. Victor's dreams began to alter. The painting between space became the painting between dreams, became the painting in dreams. The cells became tissues, muscles, bones. The composite was no longer a grouping. It was a form that sprawled rich and red like the meat in Victor's own body. He taught the cells what they were, and through him they acknowledged that they were. Through this, the cells continued to die. Each individual lived, and now they could be said to live, between 1 second and 3. Their minds, however, evolved to match the wits of their creator. They developed memory. They developed culture. They became vast bodies of towering meat which were no more sapient than the cities inhabited by man. But in those houses, the cells thrashed and wailed against the inevitability of their lifespans. The trees Victor saw were no more than propagations of suffering perpetuated helplessly by its victims. The red forest was a pit of cyclical sapient death. The painting had grown broken, and it knew who had broken it. Victor did not understand any of this, but he could feel the animosity. He understood that the things in his dreams sought to find him and hurt him with a brutality bordering on the desperate. He did not let them find him, and they did not stop searching. The cells quested angrily into the space of Victor's dreams. When that didn't work, they thrust themselves into his reality and pushed themselves deep into his home. There they sat and composed a new form, white and sharp like old husks and pale brethren, an executioner to reflect their execution. It was this executioner that strode towards Victor as he struggled and cried out. He did not know the creature, but the creature knew him. It had seen him every night, its many, many lives shaped and cast by a man who hadn't asked for any of this, hadn't even known it was happening. Years after all of this, Peter Pigeonhole would make a postulate to complement drip theory. He would argue that nearly all anomalies had a similar goal, the propagation of self and furtherment of their stance in reality. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't always right. The cells acted on their basic drive for existence like a creak under gravity. It was only when they became a thing that could think did they wish to pursue otherwise. All anomalies desire existence in the beginning. The executioner's slash and the flow of blood were driven by hate, and hate alone. Oslia stumbled home. She felt much worse than she'd felt that morning. Her house was warmer than the outside air. She hoped the nausea and fatigue were a result of merely overtaxing herself. That was a thing, wasn't it? She sat back on the couch for the second time that day and hoped it was. The longer she lay, the more she knew she was wrong. Her muscles felt far too sore to be a result of her walk, and the soreness felt uncomfortable and deep. She'd felt worse aches by far, but something about this lingered in the core of her arms and legs. It was as if her muscles were supported by a framework, and that framework was deeply exhausted. She lifted her arm, and that soreness was there, coursing blackly through some rotten centre. She was getting worse, and she was getting worried. Should she call someone? But then, what could they do? This didn't seem natural, and for all the ways the world had changed, medical science could not counter supernatural ailments. Oslia did not believe she could be helped. She did not think making a call would alleviate her problem. It couldn't. This was her conscious and rational conclusion. Humans are not rational beings. Oslia fumbled for her phone before realizing she hadn't taken it with her. She tried to roll to a standing position, but her knees buckled. Her arms were not strong enough to stop her face from hitting the carpet. The pain was secondary to the shock of her own weakness. She slowly and laboriously got on her feet. Her world felt like it was tilting, like she was still tripping and falling down. She staggered to her window curtains and clung to them for support. Maybe she could get back to her bedroom if she followed the wall. There was movement behind her curtain. Something was in her yard, shifting erratically. Oslia's heart pounded. Whatever it was close. She had a mental image of that spinning woman from so long ago, sweat stains under her arms, droplets collecting on the tip of her nose. Oslia's hands shook. If it was the woman, if she opened the curtains and it was the woman, She threw open the curtains. The thing on the other side sparked and crackled. Blue gels oozed from openings in its geometrically warped body. It reached towards the glass with glowing blue hands. Its head was a screen, and the screen said her name. Oslia screamed and dug her fingers into the curtains. It was the robot from her dream. Its hands pressed against the glass, then into the glass, then through the glass. The hands groped for her, and she reeled in fear, pulling the curtains from their rack. She fell to the ground a second time, increasing her vertigo twofold. The robot pushed its way through the glass, as if it was thick, melted plastic. Portions of the window came off and stuck to the entity, slowly sliding down its convoluted surface. What glass remained froze after contact ceased, drying up and folding into intricate, ragged shapes. The robot tore a hole into her world and into her room. Oslia watched sludgy glass pool by its feet, mixing with the slimy gel staining her floor. The mess solidified for her that this was real. It was all happening. She crab-walked backwards and her muscles screamed in protest. She wanted to turn around, get up and run, but she continued to stare. She saw the robot's legs, one a misshapen mass of wires and polygons, the other almost human-like, save for the location of its kneecap, move in slow and implacable steps. The screen of its face bulged outwards into the shape of a silvery beak. The beak parted like wet plaster, and electricity arced between the jagged ends. Oslia. It spoke in a synthesized moan. Oslia. That was enough to get her to twist around, get her legs under her. She rose against the weights holding her down and made for the stairs built into the wall of the room. Everything looked flat, but felt twisted. She felt herself pitching forward and grabbed the banister, slowly and laboriously bringing herself up step by step. Behind her, the voice again. Oslia. Like a mindless mantra. The robot was slow, but it had been slow for a long time. It had years to become used to its own malformed body. Oslia had no such luxury. Each step was a miniature mountain. Each heave of her body was an aching spike that impaled her constitution. She had always outrun the robot. Now she'd been brought to its level. She almost collapsed at the top of the stairs, but she wasn't done yet. She transitioned from banister to wall and continued limping along. Oslia. The thing behind her was so close now. She could feel an energized reverberation like the hum of a great engine, an engine that would grind her up between its cylinders and spit her out when there was nothing left to use. Oslia made it past her open door. She fumbled for the knob. Her hands slipped. She cursed. Oslia. From outside. Then a harsh buzzing. She turned the knob's lock and shut the door, wheeling around to find her phone. The momentum made her fall again, cursing a second time. She saw the familiar outline of the phone on her bedstand and crawled towards it. She eyed the window on her way. If it came down to it, she would jump. It might have to. The robot was now pounding on the door. Whatever trick it had pulled with the glass could not be applied to wood. The harsh buzzing faded to a growl. It was a granite growl, the kind made by scraping things together until their surfaces screamed. Oslia reached the phone. She made 2 calls. Her phone rang. A serpentine form shifted lazily in response. A grey hand answered. "Hold this," said a voice through several rows of teeth. Silence. "Yo, they just hung up." The hand gesticulated incredulously to another being just across from its own. The other being was equally toothy, but round and limbless. "I think I got punked or something. Take a look." The other being spawned a pair of orange hands to receive the phone from the grey ones. Its mouth briefly became a scrutinizing eye.
"Who's Oslia?"
A pause.
"She sent this from 2012.
Right? The grey hands took the phone back, and a grey face read it over. Another hand tapped the phone questioningly. "What kind of caliber 4 being gets in trouble and decides to dial the future for help? How did they even pull that off?" The mouth of the orange face pursed.
Probably got intercepted and redirected. I don't think they meant to call you. Looks like they were calling."
The orange face hovered next to the grey one, and the colours briefly blurred into a heretofore unknown hue.
"NAPD Tier 3 Report Executive Sergeant Brooke?"
The 2 beings pondered this from their own private void, a vast distance from where this Brooke character lived. "Do you think we should forward this to where it's supposed to go?" the grey one asked.
"Are you unable to decide that for yourself?"
"Don't confuse my curiosity for indecision."
"Cry about it."
"Cope."
"Seethe."
"Mauled."
"Hole."
"Trap." This exchange went on for several hours. No action was taken.